Here we are then, you and I. Having left the cave and tamed the animals, having sown the seeds and grown from village tribe to city-state, to a world of warring nations. Now we wait at the borders of our perception, waiting for the vision to go beyond this nation, to be one human family on this earth. A few centuries ago, we woke up to the fact that the world was not flat, but a sphere. And our realization was that the earth had always been a sphere, even while we had thought it flat. So now we're waking up to the realization that humanity is one whole society, one global economy, one family of beings in a shared environment. No matter how cunningly we divide ourselves as good and evil, or Republican and Democrat, or black and white, Christian, Muslim, Jew, our divisions are imposed on an already existing unity. This fundamental condition which we share, our humanity, is unchangeable by religion or government or by any authority whatsoever. Our ancestors designed the systems and built the institutions which we've inherited, with each generation modifying the social structure according to the priorities of the time. When the American colonies threw out the British and constituted a new government, they kept one very important ingredient of British rule, passed down from William the Conqueror: the idea that the ruler, whether king or parliament, president or government, wields absolute power over all. The idea that the ruling power over us may force its laws, punishments, and wars on everyone. In the United States, we're still subject to that power in the form of a national government which recognizes no greater authority than its own. This government sustains its power over the people by the compulsory rule of law, and by an adversarial, legal, and political system which requires that we struggle with each other for justice and for power. We have been taught to struggle as a way of thought and as a way of life. This condition pervades every aspect of our society, enforced by an absolute authority over all. Our predicament is that we have inherited a social system which works well for a society of opponents and adversaries. So long as we divide ourselves between friends and enemies, and winners and losers, then the present order of society is workable. However, if our vision is of a more harmonious social order, in which human society is perceived as a whole, and in which human conflict is perceived as a condition to be avoided or healed, then the present system won't get us there. Today, we inhabit a new age, a global age, which includes all the races, all the religions, and every nation. We're living together here, sharing the same origins, the same conditions, and the same destiny, and yet all around the planet, we're stuck in the mode of man against man, nation against nation. Many of us see the absurdity and the tragedy of man against man as a way of life, but feel powerless to intervene. The human self-destruction is sponsored by national governments which recognize no other authority than their own, and condoned by religions which recognize no other morality than their own. None of the governments serves humanity as a whole, but each pursues its own supposed national interests, regardless of its effect on the rest of the human family. There is an ancient truth which man has known forever, but which remains a secret to this civilization. We are directed from a source beyond our reasoning. The source is not in the legislatures, not in the seats of power, not in the temples or the churches. The source is within ourselves. possessed by an unconscious intelligence which somehow has arranged our bodies into a living whole, which does what it is doing whether or not we think, whether or not we legislate. This intelligence is the pilot of this life, using the mind as one tool, one sense in a symphony of sensations. This intelligence is at work within us and throughout all humanity. Just as our individual bodies comprise billions of cells mysteriously unified by the living intelligence into one whole being, so humanity comprises billions of beings mysteriously collected into one whole existence. We are already connected by this intelligence on wavelengths beyond our reasoning, beyond our wildest dreams. Our problem is the ability to separate ourselves from each other is taking precedence over our connectedness. Our spiritual wholeness is being ignored in favor of ideologies which divide us and keep us apart. If we continue the game as it is now being played, if we pick sides and fight for what we believe and compete for power over others, our personal, social, and environmental problems will remain unresolved. The quest for a more harmonious social order is not going to be achieved by conflict with each other or within ourselves, but by the acceptance of ourselves individually and collectively as a whole. Rather than working against each other, our need is to work with each other. If we can free ourselves from the compulsion to struggle, we can then perceive the wholeness of our condition and our inclusion within an already existing unity. Man against man is not the answer. Man against man is the problem. Our difficulty is that the requirements of our culture distract us from fulfilling our deepest needs. If the mind is chattering on, hoping for this, fearing that, then any perception of oneself as a whole is excluded. Can we work together for shared benefits rather than against each other for shared suffering? By focusing on relationships where a mutual benefit can be accomplished, where agreement is the goal, our mood is transformed. We become creative and caring rather than defensive and greedy. By concentrating on what is mutually beneficial, we are happier in our family, more successful, and more productive in our community. The way we think is within our personal power. The healing of human conflict is an inside job. In order to heal our divided selves, we must first notice, then pay complete attention to our own inner dialogue, the ongoing chatter of our personal mind. This is the first step on an inner journey. The purpose of the journey is not to correct oneself, but to accept oneself, to know one's own mind, and to face the actualities of the life being lived. The inner dialogue reveals our confusion as we try to adapt to the requirements of an authoritarian and adversarial social system. As we journey beyond the chatter, there are hidden emotions waiting to be felt, inhibited hopes and stifled fears waiting to be expressed. The realization is that we are free to be who we naturally are, to feel our own sensations, to love who we love, to be free to contribute our own special talents to the world. The self is whole and has always been whole, even when we had thought it divided. When we dissolve the riddles of our own inner world and accept our indivisible selves as a whole without judgment, then the soul can be itself and do its own work for the benefit of the human family. If the mind is rested and the dualisms are quieted, one might hear the music of the earth and step into eternity and realize the freedom of the soul. Such freedom isn't granted by another, cannot be given or taken away by the rule of law. Such freedom cannot be taught or studied or judged, but occurs according to an inner realization unique to the person. We share a common condition as human beings on this planet. Each of us has a unique path, directed, if we allow ourselves to feel it, by the mysterious intelligence of the living soul within us. The indivisible soul is alive now, in its original innocence, here, in this place, at this time, being itself. Our love, our work, our joyful task is to fulfill the one within. This is the satisfaction we seek. Each of us can do this. The truths of our existence are beyond governance. No amount of force, no amount of legislation or punishment can solve our problems or remove our differences. The truths of our existence are within us and within our personal power.